as a panelist on. That's a record for us. Continuous improvement.
I have to say, I like Mr. Rulin's little candy cane there in the back. He's got some festive background going as well. I mean, nice job there, Dr. Rulin.
I'm not getting any compliments on the wolf.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. I mean, but you know what? Yours never changes. Sorry,
wolf.
Dr. Mon. You should have like put some jingle bells or something around
in
that.
November. I was quarantined in the sunroom at my house, so that was the one change of location that I've had.
That's true. That is true. I should have complimented that. You know, I should have said something then.
Dr. Rulin,
isn't it cold outside there, Kim?
It is cold. I'm very cold. Yeah, I'm very cold.
Rulin, is that like an actual backdrop, or is that a Zoom backdrop?
No, that's an actual backdrop. This is I'm in my wife's office, and she does a lot of virtual teaching. So this is her backdrop. So I'll give credit to her.
That's next level there. All right, we are almost at 6, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get the agenda up. And is it showing on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me get back up to roll call stuff here. 1 minute to go, so.
Remember, Lori, I'll be there bright and early.
I get there 7:30, so come on.
Okay.
It's not quite bright and early yet at 7:30 these days, but it's early.
True.
All right, my PC is saying 6 o'clock, so we're ready to roll, Mr. President.
So we need the truth and taxation first, right?
That's correct. Let me switch meetings here real quick. There we go.
Okay, call the meeting to order with the roll call.
Mrs. Allen? Here. Mrs. Conquest?
Here.
Mrs. Fisher?
Here.
Mr. Karczewski?
Muted.
Is it working now?
There you are.
Yep,
yep. Here.
Mr. Skorzynski?
Here.
Mrs. Thompson? Mr. Sartorius?
Here.
Okay, as required by statute, this is the public hearing on our 2020 tax levy, which is required anytime a public body is recommending a levy that is more than 5% beyond the prior year's extension. So Mrs. Robinson has loaded up the final 2020 tax levy. Mrs. Robinson, can you at least give us a brief rundown here?
Sure. So yeah, just following on the timeline, we presented the tentative levy to the board in November, and we did not receive any new information. So what you see in front of you tonight is that the same levy that was presented last month. So we're looking at preliminarily a estimated around 6%, possibly a little bit higher, 6% in overall increase in EAV. So the levy as presented would ensure that we would capture any new growth based on that estimate. And, you know, later this evening, then we'll ask the board to adopt this levy as our final levy, and I will file that in all the counties as soon as tomorrow if it's approved. So just the only other thing I would mention is looking at the attachment, we show the various scenarios depending on where the overall growth ends up. And again, we're estimating a little bit higher than 6%. So that will be right, that column right in the middle. So you could see the total tax rate would be right around $3.27. And we're currently, this last year's levy was $3.30. So we'll see a bit of a decrease. But again, there's the range, which is noted in the narrative that we will end up anywhere between 324 and 331 based on the final growth. So I can take any questions anyone may have.
Go ahead.
None.
All right, I will tell the board, we did not receive any public comment regarding the tax levy. Unless the board has further questions on this at this time, you can adjourn the public hearing on the 2020 tax levy.
Okay, motion to adjourn.
So moved. Swarzynski.
I'll second the motion to adjourn.
All of those in favor, roll call so we know who it is.
You want roll call?
Yes,
So we know who's voting.
We need to do a roll call in each of these when we're doing remote meetings.
Okay, Mr. Swarzynski,
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher,
Aye.
Mrs. Allen,
Aye.
Mrs. Conquest,
Aye.
Mr. Karczewski,
Aye.
and Mr. Sartorius.
Aye, motion carried.
All right, back over to our regular meeting. You are ready for a roll call, sir?
Okay. Go ahead.
Mrs. Allen,
Here.
Mrs. Conquest,
Here.
Mrs. Fisher,
Here.
Mr. Karczewski,
Here.
Mr. Swarzynski,
Here.
Mrs. Thompson, Mr. Sartorius.
Here, we do have a quorum.
I
And we
believe
can-
next is a pledge of allegiance, and I'm going to do my best to get it back on the flag there. So if you can join me in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge
Allegiance
allegiance to the flag
Flag
of the
United States of America
and to the
to
republic
Republic
which
for
is
which
which
it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under God, indivisible, with liberty
liberty and justice
justice
for
for
all.
all.
for all.
All right, one more moment to get back to the screen share. Where were you? Okay, does everyone see the agenda again?
Okay, so I need a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make the motion. We approve the agenda.
A second,
I'll
Second.
second.
and roll call.
Mr. Swarzynski,
Aye.
Mrs. Allen,
Aye.
Mrs. Conquest,
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Karczewski,
Aye.
Mr. Sartorius.
Aye, motion carried. Okay, district announcements.
Just a few things to bring to everyone's attention this year. As the board well knows, for our Students of the Month, we have many local partners, including the Minooka Lions Club that helps sponsor that. Another great partnership that we have that I want to make sure that we remind people of is a partnership with the Minooka Shanahan Rotary Club, where each year they have been partnering with us and other local schools to provide basically some non-perishable food items on a regular basis to families that we have in need. I know this week, last week they dropped off, I think 40 different bins filled with bags of food that we help distribute to families in need throughout the year. Mrs. Shanholzer, our administrative assistant, kind of keeps and manages the distribution of that. So I just wanted to publicly say thank you to the Rotarians for their continued partnership with our district and helping families in our area. And as I know people have seen from watching Facebook and seeing emails from their own schools, there have been tons of giving opportunities from our school buildings throughout this holiday season. So thanks to the entire Minooka 201 family and the community for stepping up to help families in need, because 2020 has been a year like no other for so many families. So those are just some brief announcements to remind people of the terrific giving that goes on throughout our district. So happy holidays to all of those.
In the month.
Yes, again, while we are limited in our in-person ability to celebrate here, we want to make sure that we continue to recognize the outstanding efforts and achievements of students at MIS and Minooka Junior High School. These are selected by the teachers and then kind of go through an evaluation process where they take a look at the efforts of the students that are nominated. This month, Minooka Intermediate School was proud to nominate Ms. Molly Schramm. Ms. Tabor Challey and Maxwell Remus for Students of the Month, and Minooka Junior High School. We have 4 students, Karina Ekstrom, Matthew Myers, Owen McClelland, and Ashley Vera Medina. So congratulations to all 7 of those. As the board well knows, we've got plaques and some gift certificates from local businesses. And this is highly sponsored by the Minooka Lions Club. So thank you as always for your sponsorship there. And to the students of the month, this might have been an awkward month in any time since holiday break is already upon us by the time we have this board meeting. But we certainly hope that when gatherings can get back up to larger numbers, that we have an opportunity to celebrate with our students of the month sometime this year. But congratulations to for everything that you've done and for this wonderful accomplishment. And we hope that you and yours are celebrating.
Okay.
Sorry. I'd like to say real fast, congratulations to those students. It is a very trying time, as we all know, with this remote, and is definitely an accomplishment to be on that, and with that accomplishment. So congratulations, that's fantastic.
Okay, SDR holiday card winners.
Sure. We are thrilled to again have representatives from throughout our district that were selected by our architect STR partners in their annual holiday card. They take submissions from each of their clients throughout the suburbs. And this year we had a great deal of winners come through. So from Aux Sable Elementary School, Cameron Port and Eliana Goddard. From Jones Elementary School, we have Colton Frana, Gianna Frana, and Carly Mitchum. From Minooka Elementary School, we have Robert Goulet and Leo Amidi. And then from Walnut Trails Elementary School, we have Riley Hilger, Nalia Bello, and Gia Riley. And I did upload the actual holiday card to where it would take some time to kind of flip back and forth. But as the board knows, normally in the pre-COVID, we would actually have a framed version of this along with the celebration where we bring each of these kids up and they show us their picture. So again, COVID and 2020 have struck that down. But here we have uploaded this so everyone can see the submissions that were selected as winners. And there is a guide on the very back where you can see which ones were from our students. So that, you know, that's now posted for all to see. So congratulations to Mrs. Adamitis, to Ms. Buck, to Mrs. Pierre and Mrs. McCormick for, again, having some of your students selected as winners here. So again, just another great thing to celebrate during this holiday season.
All right. Moving on to the, any comments from the public?
Yes, we have 3 tonight. 1 second while I get back to that. And then again, these are submitted and we just read them verbatim. So here we go. The first one was submitted by John Golat on December 8th, 2020. I hope the holiday season has brought the many gifts of family and joy can bring to your souls. Unfortunately, for many of the students of Minooka 201, the holiday season has no respite from the depression and stress of when the school will reopen to them while their younger siblings and friends from private tutoring, church, sports clubs, dance, daycare, etc., are enjoying the joy of that experience. I am not an expert at education or parenting for that matter, but I am an expert at knowing my own child. The glow and glimmer she had for school since day 1 at MPC 2 years ago is now just a memory, as it is more just something she has to do. No first grader should see school as a chore that just needs to get done. Unlike us adults, our children are in a lose-lose situation. They didn't choose to have school closed and they didn't choose to have teachers unprepared to be able to successfully use technology. This is what separates us. We adults chose our careers. We choose every day how to be safe, how to work, and how to prepare our kids are left in the wind. The unfortunate thing is this could have been avoided. No, not the pandemic, but the response the district superintendent chose to take. Like everyone, we all saw this in March as maybe lasting 30 days tops, but March rolled into April. And the next thing we knew was that we were looking at more of the same come August. The disheartening part was, like many DHS essential employers, more than 70% of the school districts across the state chose to make a plan in April 2020 as to how to fully reopen in August 2020. Minooka 201, namely the superintendent, chose to wait until the end of July 2020 to survey the parents of the district, and then waited until the Wednesday before the start of the school year to set aside what a supermajority of the families of Minooka 201 wanted and chose to go full remote. This is the first straw that began to break the camel's back. I mentioned essential employers because at the same time Dr. Amon made his choice per board policy for the families of District 201, DHS added schools as essential as they support the essential workforce. This classification opened up grants and CARES dollars for PPE, sanitation, and support to keep schools open and included CDC and OSHA guidance. The guidance is also what ISBE adopted with a few tweaks, but all understood and acknowledged that the greater fear to closing schools was that children would regress in their ability to retain what they have learned and not meet the basic aptitude for their grade level. In June 2020, ISBE issued guidance on how to open schools that link directly to the CDC on how to safely open, distance, and contact trace. Many area districts, private, public, large, and small, chose to use this guidance to convene working groups to come up with a set goal and create plans and contingency to the contingency plans. They published them for their district residents to see and comment. Minooka 201 had no plan, no working group, no published plan. This lack of planning is what helped create the numerous social media groups calling for the reopening of Minooka 201, along with many district supporters trolling them. As many of you are aware, the ISBE presently has FY21 grant applications available along with updated guidance for reopening schools, B-3 education, as well as special education, where they recognize that schools that have failed to provide an equal education. The ISBE recognizes that districts are not providing an equal education to special needs, hearing impaired, vision impaired, homeless, and early education pre-K to 3 students. The ISBE also provides a full rundown of a 2-week process to reopen schools that includes an audit of the building, the amount of information on ISBE, CDC, HS, FEMA, IDPH, OSHA is endless on how to safely coordinate, plan, and implement a safe reopening that those schools have been successful have followed. Yet Minooka 201 has found itself up a creek without a paddle, heading right for a rock in a hard place because there is no plan. The meeting on December 21st is to discuss what the tax levy, which since 2010 has been projected to be 3.31, and presently the plans brought up at the November 2020 meeting all call for limiting the amount paid to IMRF, Social Security, and other pensions because the district for some reason decided to not fully fund teacher pensions, yet by law has to do a yearly tax levy because of bonds and debt servicing. Again, showing more and more that the superintendent and board are not planning or at the very least on the same page. Your own numbers don't lie, or do they? Which brings the trust issue back up. Many of the groups that are calling for the reopening of the district all share the same common cord, faith, hope, trust. We parents have lost faith in the fact that you truly care about the education of our students. We don't trust that you hold the professional staff to the same standards as you hold our children. We see that you are only using us and the district as a resume step for bigger and better things for yourself, not for the district as a whole. We hope that maybe you will do the right thing and reopen the schools, but we don't hold our breath for it. Question 1, why did you choose to use just the FAQs as guidance for reopening the schools and not all the guidance documents and setting aside what parents of the district wanted in choosing/allowing full remote? Question 2, when will an actual work group of all involved parties, admin, staff, parents be convened to come up with an actual plan to reopen fully? Question 3, with being full remote through January 15th, why have a winter break? Since remote learning can be done for the most part anywhere in the world, why not just cancel winter break? Question 4, how are you addressing the equal education needs of all students? If accommodations are being provided, why are they not being available to all students equally? If there are no accommodations being made, how is the district protecting itself from liability? Question 5, as an essential employer, the district is allowed to mandate how its employees are to act. Why hasn't the district mandated that its staff do everything they can to avoid contact and spread outside of school to avoid staff issues? Question 6, per HIPAA and privacy, you can release positive test results of individuals, student, teacher, or staff, without naming them directly, such as Jones teacher or MIS student, MCHS sibling, and still protect their privacy. Why have you chosen not to publish this information? How did you intend to correct the issue of learning regression, summer school, year-round schooling? Question 8, how many grants under the CARES Act has the district applied for? How many grants as an essential employer has the district applied for to the DHS for PPE, sanitation, filtration, etc.? Question 9, are you looking for parent volunteers to help in the planning of reopening the schools? These are difficult times, but are compounded by the fact that the district is pushing more and more families to start to use the universal grievance policy due to the preponderance of evidence that the parents have that shows the district's current curriculum decisions is causing direct harm to its students, that it is not being equitable in the education opportunities of all students. and is leaving many of the students behind. I hope the district makes the right decision, as April 2021 is fast approaching and a majority of the seats are up for re-election. As they have said, elections have consequences. I look forward to your answers. Sincerely, John Golot, father to a Jones first grader and a preschooler at a private school. The next public comment is from Ms. April Stein. Dr. Mon and school board members, I am writing today to express my deep concern for our students this school year. Our students are struggling immensely, not just academically, but also socially and emotionally. We cannot continue on the path we are on. We need to get our students back to school 5 days a week in person. If we continue on the path we are on, our students are going to have some serious lifelong effects from this. We are setting our students up to fail now and in the future. It is deeply concerning that our superintendent and board seemingly feel that we are doing what is best for our children with our current plan. We have made the cure to this illness so much worse than the actual illness, especially for our students. You need to step up and make the difficult decisions and get these kids back to their normal routine. This is your job. This is what you get paid for and are elected to do. I know my family is not the only family experiencing great frustration with our current situation. We have a kindergarten student that is starting to hate school. This should not be their first experience with school. We are setting her up to hate school for the rest of her school career. The daily battle to get her to do work and get on the computer for her Zoom meetings is starting to become all too much. I fear we are starting to jeopardize our relationship with her from the constant battles and fighting to get schoolwork done. She is already above grade level and is becoming more and more bored each day. Her teacher is doing the absolute best job she can, but she cannot effectively teach these kids with our current plan. It saddens me that we are forcing our youngest learners to learn in a way that is not appropriate for them. Kindergartners are not meant to be on a Zoom 3+ hours a day with 18+ other kids. They are meant to be taught in small groups through a highly engaging way that allows students to move and learn in a variety of ways. It is not developmentally appropriate for these students to be expected to learn this way. Remote learning has taken a huge toll on our family. Someone needs to be with our daughter for the entire school day to keep her on track and help her complete assignments, as it is not appropriate for her to be left to her devices even when on Zoom, as the teacher is not physically there to help them. Because of this, I've had to enlist the help of my mom to watch my 1-year-old when she is not available. My son does not get the one-on-one attention that he needs because I am with her all day. It is extremely difficult to meet the needs of both children with remote learning going on. It has already been stated multiple times that COVID cases have not been tracked back to the school environment, and school is not a source of spread. I ask you, why are we not in school then? The CDC says the safest place for our kids is in school, but we continue to choose not to listen to this. I know the excuse has been the lack of staff and substitutes. You have had since March to figure out a plan for this. You knew this was going to be an issue with returning to school. I am a substitute teacher in another area school district that I used to teach in. Like many other substitutes, I'm not able to sub because my child is at home. If she were in school, I would be able to sub. You need to consider this when blaming the lack of subs available. Are our fine arts teachers helping to fill in the vacancies when needed? If not, why? They are not having in-person classes, so they should be able to cover classrooms. Teachers who are choosing to quarantine because of a possible exposure should be tested and returned to the classroom as soon as possible. Criteria should be established for who needs quarantines. The way things are now, teachers can easily abuse the system, choosing when to quarantine with no real proof of exposure. Yes, most teachers will not, but there will definitely be those that do. If teachers are needing to quarantine, they should still be teaching their students remotely while a staff member monitors and assists students in the class. Of course, if a teacher is symptomatic, a substitute should be put in their place. We have made education easily accessible to our students remotely, so teachers should in turn be able to teach remotely in quarantine. If we get our students back to school 5 days a week, I will happily apply to sub in the district to ensure my daughter and other students can go to school. We need to look at the districts that have been successful since day one around us and figure out what they are doing to be successful. There are many public and private schools around us that have been successful. I hope you seriously consider getting our students back to school 5 days a week. If not for all students, we need to start considering getting our most vulnerable students back, i.e. special education, kindergarten, and first grade. These are some of the populations that are most in the most need to get back. However, we need to get all students back in person. Respectfully, April Stein. Thank you, Ms. Stein. And then today at 3:57, we received one final public comment. This is from, it looks like Natalie Justice. Hi there, I hope this email finds you well and ready for a great holiday season. I'm writing this email to our board to fight for our children to get back into school for more time. Board, just because Dr. Mon proposes something doesn't mean you need to just say, okay, you can fight for our children to get back into the classroom for more time than he is suggesting. They don't have this in other districts and kept the schools open. I am grateful that your plan is to return to school on January 19th. The hybrid worked so well last time around that we should now be considering more time in the classroom. First, full 5 days a week like other districts in the area, Shanahan, Yorkville, New Lenox, Mokina, and Frankfort, and of course all private schools. There is enough information out there that we can do this and without any negative health repercussions. If that for some reason won't be considered, these kids, especially the elementary students, need to be in school more. They are missing out on so much more than just their education. These are crucial years of learning, and they need to be given the chance to learn in the proper environment. Here's what the board members need to fight for. More time in the classroom, if 5 days is not an option. A hybrid schedule that fills up all 5 days of the school week. A through L, Monday, Tuesday, rotate Friday, M through Z, Wednesday, Thursday, rotate Friday, or rotate the Wednesday, or do a split of Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and Tuesday, Thursday. These need to be full days. There are excuses brought up about this being difficult for families to accommodate. It is not as hard as less time in the classroom. Please, board members, fight for our children to get back into school full-time if possible. If not that, one of these proposed solutions, all it takes is for one person to start the discussion and say, all in favor. During this whole crazy time, all parents want is a choice. If some parents don't want their children in school, that is still an option. Please fight for our children. Natalie Justice. And that, Mr. President, is the end of public comments. Mr. Sartorius, are you there?
Okay, I'm back.
There you go.
The consent agenda, is there a motion to approve this consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Before we do a roll call, Mr. President, just to run through for those that aren't familiar with what a consent agenda is. This is one vote on a bunch of routine business items. So we have the Treasury's report. We do have the approval of minutes from previous meetings and approval of the list of bills. On tonight's personnel items, we do have the new employment of a few of the positions where we had resignations. We do have quite a few leaves coming up of employees that need some type of FMLA or leave. And there is also a termination on the personnel report. We did not have any FOIA requests. And then the annual employee benefit plan renewals are there for your approval with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Illinois.
Okay, need a roll call vote.
Mrs. Conquest.
Aye.
Mr. Karczewski.
Aye.
Mrs. Allen.
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher.
Aye.
Mr. Skorzynski.
Aye.
Mr. Sartorius.
Aye, motion carried. Okay, action items, the final 2020 tax levy.
Mrs. Robinson is again available to answer any further questions for you, but none of the information has changed since the public hearing we held at 6.
I need a motion to approve the 2020 tax levy.
I'll make a motion, we adopt the tax levy as presented.
For a second.
Second.
Any comments? Okay. Roll call.
Mr. Skorzynski.
Aye.
Mrs. Allen.
Aye.
Mrs. Conquest.
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher.
Aye.
Mr. Karczewski.
Aye.
Mr. Sartorius.
Aye, motion carried. Next is the approval of a contract for audit services.
Mrs. Robinson, can you walk the board through this?
Sure. So the attached engagement letter from Warmer Rogers, they have performed our audit for at least the last about 10 years. I haven't dug into if it goes back even further than that, but someone on the board actually might know that. But I just wanted to say we've had nothing but good experience with Warmer Rogers. Our audit has always been filed on time. They are very good to work with through the audit period, and then even throughout the year, if any new requirements come up or if I have any questions, they've been great to work with. So we suggest that we renew this for the additional 4 years. When you look at the proposal increase, it is less than 2%, which is actually just around $450 a year. which seems like a really reasonable increase each year. And again, in the area, they're very well-known and respected, you know, and they have several school districts in our area.
Okay. Any questions? Need a motion to approve the contract then?
I move that we approve the contract for 4 years.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any other comments? Roll call.
Mrs. Zalen,
Aye.
Mrs. Conquest,
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher,
Aye.
Mr. Karczewski,
Aye.
Mr. Skorzynski,
Aye.
Mr. Sartorius.
Aye, motion carried. Next is the 5th grade Chromebooks purchase.
So if there was one thing that 2020 has shown us is that everybody needed to quickly learn how to do video conferencing through Zoom or Google Meets, and also how quickly Chromebooks get bought up throughout our society during a pandemic. Mr. Souza has proactively already prepared the computer purchase that normally we would have conducted in May or June, just because of the lead time and demand on Chromebooks. So we are talking about what we are using to replenish Chromebooks for the 2021-2022 school year tonight. So Mr. Souza, can you please give the board your recommendation here?
Thank you for the introduction. Kind of stole most of my talking points there. Yeah, basically, all the manufacturers that we've been talking with have just said, expect 4 to 6 months from whenever you place it. In fact, talking to neighboring school districts who ordered Chromebooks back in August have still not even received them. So we're just getting ahead of this the best we can. The nice thing though, we have come to an agreement with our leasing company. So this is a 4-year lease to own. So we would own it at the end of it, where if by some random chance or almost miracle in manufacturing land that the Chromebooks were to be delivered to us, say in March, they would get paid by the leasing company, but the vendor, but we would not actually be on the hook to pay until July, keeping our budget intact. So I feel this is a pretty good, like, safe measure to do. Like I said, this would have been normally coming to you guys in probably April or May, but we're just getting ahead of it so then we can prepare and align at the start of next year, 5th grade in advance. And with that, I'll take any questions.
So your total cost there is what now?
Total cost, well, the total cost is roughly $145,000, but it'll be 4 payments of $39,598.
Okay.
So the actual budgetary hit each year is just under $40,000.
Okay. I need a motion to approve the purchase.
And if I can make an amendment to the motion real quick, what the board is actually being asked to approve tonight is a 4-year lease with Providence Capital at an estimated cost of $39,598 a year. So we want to make sure that because this is technically, you know, a multi-year lease, that our motion is accurate.
Is there a motion for that?
I just ask a quick question of Aaron. I'm sorry. Where does this put us in all the extra Chromebooks we procured over this last year to get, you know, students one-to-one? Is this going to be enough to have us fully covered for that scenario?
Yeah, so we're fully covered right now. So what we do though is in our plan is every year essentially we're going to purchase the 5th grade unit and then assign that 5th grade unit to that 5th grader in August, and then through the rest of their Minooka 2-1 career, they will use that assigned Chromebook. For the younger grades 2 through 4 who are Chromebooks, right now our plan is those are more assigned to like the teacher or the classroom, and as a 2nd grader moves into 3rd grade, they'll likely get reassigned a different Chromebook, because right now in our grades 2 through 4, they are still kind of a mixture of multiple different models through the course of procurement for the past, you know, 4 years, I suppose. So we don't have a planned schedule necessarily to replace every Chromebook at the younger grade levels yet. Right now, our plan is to run essentially our current second through fourth grade fleet essentially one more year, and then put us on a path towards kind of a routine, if you will, procurement, and get into like a track, if you will, like how we are on the 5th through 8th grade. The 8th grade model that the current 8th graders right now, those Chromebooks, we would have kind of like a cell if anybody would want it, but most likely those are already pretty old now. So then we would actually keep those as spares, loaners, and other kind of to solve other problems to get through the next year without procuring additional devices.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay. We have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the 4-year lease of the 5th grade Chromebooks.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second the motion.
Roll call.
Mrs. Conquest,
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher,
Aye.
Mrs. Allen,
Aye.
Mr. Karczewski,
Aye.
Mr. Skorzynski,
Aye.
Mr. Sartorius.
Aye. Motion carried. Communication, or no, discussion. Hybrid learning update.
Don't skip the hybrid learning updates, please, President Sartorius.
Well, I thought that was easy one to get by.
Yeah, right. Again, as everyone knows, we took a pivot to remote learning to get us through the holiday season and to hopefully avoid any of the holiday transmissions. I'm happy to report that by all indications, everything is well in line for us to return to our hybrid learning model on January 19th, as we originally planned. The community spread in our area is trending in the right direction. If you look at the school-wide metrics for each of our counties, the positivity rate and the new cases are still in the substantial range, but they are trending in the right direction, which is a very positive thing. The Thanksgiving surge was, it seems more like it was the end of the second wave that hit in October and early November, more than anything else. Hopefully families have been, taking the distancing and health mitigations very seriously. And things seem to be going in the right direction. So we hope that through the holiday break and Christmas and the other holidays and New Year that people stay safe and help us continue on the track to reopen as we should. Our staffing, before we went on break, the number of staff that had to be in quarantine was tremendous. We were down to like 5 to 7 staff in quarantine, whereas we had I think like 37 staff members, in quarantine before we took this break. So everything is trending in a wonderful direction for us to get kids back in our buildings in January. As we heard through public comment, and I know in my conversation with board members, we are all committed to continue to working on getting these kids in school more. We continue to look at strategies for either getting more kids in the buildings at the same time. And at this time, with the number of kids that are indicating they want to come back into the school buildings, we just cannot keep a safe 6-foot distance if we break away from the hybrid model, as well as the option of getting more time with the kids that are here. That means going through the lunch scenario and the number of kids that would be in those environments. With the masks off is a concern, as well as, and Dr. Rulin can speak to this a little bit later, right now in the afternoon sessions is when the teachers are really getting in and doing more support with the one-on-one and small group work and stuff. And so that would be something that would go away if we took more in-person time each day. So there's just a lot of factors. And as the board knows, yes, we've seen other districts that have different models than us, and I do engage in conversations with leaders throughout the suburbs and find out the set of facts that have led them to go down those paths. In almost every scenario, that they are able to maintain 6-foot distance because of either the numbers of kids that have chosen to go remote. Or the size of the classrooms or the large spaces that they may have available to them that we don't. So there's just always a set of facts that have led those districts to make those decisions, and they're different than what have led us down this path. So that's why we again are recommending that we open on January 19th with our current hybrid learning model. but we continue the conversations about what can work here to get more kids into our building. So before we get into to questions by the board, like before, I'm going to kind of go around from our district office cabinet level administrators that are on the call and just have them give brief updates on what's happening in their side of hybrid learning, as well as what the past 3 weeks of remote learning have shown. So Mrs. Robinson, you indicated you didn't have much, but how did lunch go over the past few weeks?
So we have continued to distribute lunches when we've been remote for 3 weeks. We did serve over 17,000 free lunches in those 3 weeks. So we're taking a bit of a break for the winter break, but we will be back Mondays and Wednesdays starting January 4th again. So I just wanted to report that.
Thank you much. Mr. Searle, do you have any updates? Rich Searle, our Director of Buildings and Grounds.
Sure, thank you. Just kind of like to give everybody a bit of a brief overview on what we've been doing here. We have, our maintenance department has engaged in changing all the filters in all the schools. That's helped with our custodians as well. We have worked on a number of building transfer pumps, a number of boilers in the time that we've had, attempts to try to bring those up to speed. We've also engaged our HVAC contractor who has completed many of the transfer of parts at our junior high boilers, trying to take advantage of the time. And in doing that, we've also started the rebuilding of the 2 new boilers at the junior high. We hope to have that done in just a few weeks. We continue to use the time wisely to make progress on the old transportation building. We did go ahead and pour a floor in that building to try to allow the district an opportunity for future storage if necessary. If we look toward needing to remove items out of the gymnasiums, we'll have a place that is fully prepared, ready to assume those items. Life safety wise, we've engaged our architects, our engineers, and we have started the bid spec system for the abatement project that would take place over the summer. In January, we will be creating a scope of work for the issues at the Jones Elementary School. And that's pretty much a majority of what we've done in the time here. We've tried to prepare ourselves the best we can for reopening. Any questions I can answer?
That is good news. 0 question.
Thank you.
There you go. Let's move to Dr. Staub. Dr. Staub, if you are trying to talk, you are muted.
Oh.
There we go.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yep, there you go.
Okay, a little bit of delay on my end. I apologize for that. Yeah, one of the biggest things that we've been working on recently within student services is professional development for our staff. So we are offering 3 college courses that really are focusing on how they can help our staff relate to students specifically during this time of remote learning. So we have some great topics on incorporating remote learning into the classroom and even hybrid learning, as well as incorporating our student service incorporating student engagement into the classroom environment, if that be remotely or through hybrid, and making sure that our students are engaged. We've also have some classes that are focusing on student diversity within our classroom and within the classroom environment as well. We're also offering a couple of additional workshops that are going to come to us throughout January and February, as well as some on-demand videos that our staff has made themselves. I've been continuing with the student services monthly Q&A sessions that I think have been pretty helpful to our staff. They help them understand some of the legal aspects behind what we're doing and why we're doing it, as well as giving them tips and tricks on how to best implement some of these different strategies in the hybrid learning. One of the things that I'm most proud of is our staff self-care guide that we created that is focusing on mindfulness, meditation, yoga. We have some partnerships with some outside agencies, as well as some of our own staff that are experts in these areas that have offered resources, as well as courses and on-demand videos for all of those topics. That's something that I think our staff has utilized a lot. Our feedback from that has been wonderful. And we hope to continue to offer some more of these courses as we go throughout the year. As you saw, there's a lot of student service staff that are going to be taking leaves over the next semester, and as well as some positions that we do not currently have filled. So we are working with the building level staff to secure all of those positions and make sure that we have staff in all of those positions. I will say it has not been easy because it is difficult to find staff during a COVID outbreak. And there's not a lot of people that want to come into the school environment. So that's something that we are working with the local universities. Dr. Rulin has been working, reaching out to universities and getting some recent graduates to come in and interview with us as well. So we're really excited to continue to fill all of these positions. Something that I've heard from staff and parents throughout our meetings that we've been having is some positives that have come out of the COVID pandemic and are forced to change the way that we instruct students. And some of those positive, I've just been listing those as we've had meetings with parents, and parents have shared some of those positives, and I want to share some of those with you guys tonight. One is when we typically have a student that is on homebound instruction, when they can't come into the school environment, it traditionally really isolates them from their school friends, from their school environment. But this entire pandemic has really helped us understand that we can do more where that student can continue to engage, find times of the day where they might be able to incorporate their daily schedule in with what our kiddos in the classroom are doing. So there's some definite positive takeaways there. The technology has definitely helped us continue to assess our students and progress monitor students. It has been challenging for our staff to use some of those tools and learn to use them, but now that they're utilizing them, they've really found some wonderful tools that they can use either when the kids are there in the classroom, or if they're separated by remote learning, they can still gather that data. We've also used some new tools that students can actually benefit from to help them be more independent if that comes to their organization, their writing skills, or even interventions for the students to be able to use independently. So we're really excited about some of those positives, but one of the things that I've been most excited about is when parents have shared that the partnership and the communication that they've had with our staff, if that be our MPC social workers do a weekly outreach to parents on Thursday mornings, for example, and parents can send them, this is a problem that I'm having in my home environment. This is a challenge that I'm facing. And the social workers will brainstorm and then present on those strategies that Thursday morning. So that's something that I think the parents have really shared with us as a very positive, that they're now engaged more with the school and engaged more with their children. And they're taking some of that and bringing it into their home to really benefit the child as a whole. Above all else, we're really excited to see the kids again on January 19th. Our teachers are counting down the days to when they'll be able to have the kiddos in class again. So we're really excited to see them. Are there any questions on my aspect, or do we want to wait for questions until the end?
If you don't mind, I actually have some, of course. First, congratulations, because I saw you had the USF graduation, because my son actually graduated on that same day. So congratulations to you, because I saw your name pop up and I'm like, oh, I know her.
Congrats to him.
You're welcome. I had a couple questions. The first one is, when I had the concerns of the students with the IEPs last time and how they were struggling, this was before they were remote, before we went hybrid, we had made a there was a comment made that we were going to, instead of some of those students being 2 days a week, that if they needed to be more, we were going to bring them in for more days a week. I'm just following up on that to see, was that able to be followed through with? And were we able to satisfy those parents or families that their students who needed that extra help, I guess is my question. I'm just following up with you, that's all.
Yeah, thank you for following up on that. And we have been able to bring some kiddos in for 4 days a week. And that was really starting in October when we started bringing the kiddos back in for the hybrid. We were able to offer some of our kiddos that had the most intensive needs 4 days a week. So they would come in on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. And it started where we had our kiddos with the most intensive needs. And then from there, we were able to see perhaps somebody that was struggling more in remote learning based on their special education needs or their medical needs. And we were able to bring those students in. So from what I understand, we were able to satisfy all of those needs throughout the district, but I do know that our staff continues to work with families on that. And if any parents do continue to have concerns for their special needs children, they can certainly reach out to their building administrator or their special education case manager.
Okay. And let's see, more tools. And I guess that is, well, no, I guess I do have one more. So now that we've gone back remote, how are we helping or making sure that we're keeping those IEP students engaged? Because that was the big issue. Which I completely understand. So how now are we helping to keep them engaged now, I guess, at this point, because now we're all back remote. And so now we're back to square one. So I would hope that there's some kind of like what are we doing to help those parents and students?
That's a great question, Kim. Each time that we switch, so when we first started out with remote learning, and then we switched to hybrid, and then we switched again to remote learning, each time that we have those switches, our students' case managers, if that be for an IEP or a 504, are reaching out to the parents to update the student's individual learning plan, or we like acronyms in special education, so they're ILPs. So each student that has an IEP or a 504 plan has an ILP, which is focused on that environment that that child is learning in. So that's where those discussions are had for those 4 day a weeks when we were doing hybrid. But right now, what we're doing in that remote setting, some of our teachers are working with children within their classroom environments. Some of them are working with students one-on-one during that afternoon time or small groups. We also have, it's kind of an all hands on deck, to be honest with you. So we have aides that are working with students with special needs, so they have more one-on-one time. We also have, there's a question about our fine arts teachers, and we have fine arts teachers that are kind of assigned to a student to check in and do check-in, check-outs with them and make sure that the child is ready for the day, make sure that the child has ended their day, that they have everything they need to do to move on to the end of the day. So there's, it's, like I said, all hands on deck. It's not just one person that's really helping the child. It's multiple people and a team really supporting the child and making sure that we're doing what they need to be successful. And that, like I said, that's not only through their Zoom sessions, teachers are emailing students, calling students. Like, for example, we have some kiddos that they need help getting on their Zooms. So they'll have somebody call and help the kiddo get onto their Zoom for each of their classes. And then they go through that. And then at the end of the day, they call again, they go through, okay, what assignments do you still have to do? What sort of help do you need with those assignments? So it's really individualized for each child and specifically what they need.
Okay. So we are obviously, I mean, because trust me, I know we've, like, you know, we have the same thing. I just want to make sure that we are individualizing it to make sure that every child is I mean, and I know that it's not easy. It's a complicated process, but I just want to make sure that we are doing as much as we can to help each and every one, and God bless you. So I just reaching out and following up. So
thank you. No, it is. It's not easy, but I'm very proud of the work that our teams at the buildings have put together, and that they've put into working with the students and the partnerships that they've created with parents to making sure that they are supporting the children as much as we can through the remote learning sessions.
Yeah, and I hate to put it on the parents too, because I mean that's a struggle as well, because they have their own daily routine as too. So I mean, phone alarms, I don't know,
yep.
Like God bless the phone at this point, right? I mean, usually we're taking the phones away, but right now we're almost like, let's rely on those phones and put alarms, and okay, now you have science or whatever. So okay.
And that's some of those forms of how technology has benefited us. And we've found that some students really benefit from having their phone by them, and almost utilizing their phone as a personal assistant, or utilizing all of the organizational tools that are available through Google. And we're teaching students to utilize those to help them become more independent throughout the day as well.
Right. Hopefully as technology will not change too much. Just keep progressing. So, all right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just have one question for you, Tiffany, or sorry, Dr. Staub. What is our status of PPE for our staff as we get back into the building? Are we having any issues procuring enough of it? Is there anything we're still lacking?
Thank you, Emily. That's a good question. So earlier in the year, there was some challenges in getting PPE in a timely fashion, but I will say the companies that we've been working with, and I'm going to give a shout out to Granger there in Minooka, they have actually hand delivered some PPE to us when we've ordered it from them. When it comes to, we have gowns for staff, we have face shields for staff. We've even worked with families when students need more individualized PPE because they may not be able to medically utilize the face mask, and they may need an accommodation. And we're working with families to secure PPE for those students as well. So I do feel confident in the amount of PPE that has already been distributed to buildings, as well as what we have, I guess you could say, stockpiled in my office at district office, that if buildings need more, we can get more to the building. So I am confident in the level of PPE that we have for our staff.
Great, thank you. And something you said just triggered one more for me. You had mentioned a couple meetings ago the need for different types of face covering for doing things like speech therapy and things like that. Has all of that been rectified as well?
Yes, we have been able to find clear face masks, as well as face shields. We have desk guards where it's actually, they're very wide, almost like what you would see when you go to Mariano's or Target, that blocks the two areas. So we have those for all of our staff. We have those at buildings. And then again, we have a stockpile at district office. Should we need more to be delivered to buildings, we have more available.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sticking with PPE, I just remember back to, in addition to PPE, I believe it was Dr. Cheserek and Mrs. Monroe that had full dinosaur costumes, was it, as they went throughout the building to help, trace some instances. So we also have dinosaur costumes available for staff as needed. All right, any other questions for Dr. Staub? Let's move to Mr. Souza.
Hello. On the small celebration front, the tech team recently advertised our parent technology how-to or tutorial webpage, and I've heard some positive feedback via social media channels where parents could go there and see, I have a question about what Clever is, or Google Classroom, or other popular applications that we use. And the entire tech team has really kind of pitched in creating either written documentation or videos guided for parents and students. So that's been somewhat well received from what I've heard through different channels. The technology support continues on over break in the hopes that we can make repairs now to avoid some type of a January 4th rush. So we've been instructing parents who email in or contact us to either go to the district office or whatever, as different challenges require different solutions. but we want to obviously just keep things going the best we can while we're in winter break. As far as a long-term project, Freeman's leading one of them, which is our firewall evaluation. This summer, the district will have to either renew our current or move to a different firewall platform. So we're already starting the plans now for the evaluation process to then bring a more formal recommendation in the coming months. And we'll have updates along the way. With that, I'll take any of your questions.
I just want to say I've heard a lot of positive feedback about how quickly your team responds to parents' concerns with technology. And so I think you guys are doing a great job at keeping up with that demand.
Thank you, Ms. Conquest. Yeah, we're lucky to have a pretty solid team here. We have a lot of people asking questions, but we're doing the best we can. So thank you very much for that.
Just to continue along that line, Mr. Souza and his team, they realized early on that when remote learning and then a hybrid learning model was upon them, they needed to almost change their service model because more it was always teachers and then working with students on issues, and it became a parent service model just as much once we went into this environment. So they've done a fantastic job of supporting the community as a whole in trying to adjust to what 2020 has brought us here. And before we leave the technology staff, I'd like to just say thank you to Mr. Shackley, who is always on our Zoom meetings here, but he is the one that is managing the YouTube Live for us during these meetings. So he helps make that available for our community, as well as Mr. Plaskett from MES, who has really helped Mrs. Robinson keep the COVID dashboard going on our webpage. So thanks for his work in helping us with some of that issue as well. So the entire tech team as a whole, by far, again, continues to astound during this, but I just wanted to give a quick shout out to those two specifically. All right, if nothing else for Mr. Souza, we will move to Dr. Ruland.
Very good. I just want to take a moment to talk to our parents who might be watching right now. If you have not yet made your selection for third quarter, if you would please be sure to do that. Our principals are busy making sure that schedules are appropriate for when we do return. So if you have not yet made that selection, I do ask that you would take a few moments and go ahead and make that selection, so that way we can get going on that process and make the return to school that much more efficient. In line with that, much like what happens in Illinois frequently, there's a lot of planning and then there's a change that occurs. Up until last week, our building teams were very, very busy planning for access testing. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with access testing, it is the testing that we are required to do for emerging bilinguals. So students who are in our ESL programming, we have to, by the state of Illinois, assess them yearly, regardless of what grade level they are in, to determine proficiency. And that typically starts January 4th. Illinois has told us that we are unable to do that in a remote setting. We must do that in an in-person setting. So for the last several weeks, we had been planning for a schedule that would accommodate bringing students into the building in order to do assessment, even as early as January 5th for some of our students to be able to do that in a timely fashion because of the number of students we have on campus in our certain buildings. So our ESL team has been working that out with their building administration. And also I would like to thank Sarah Massey, who has taken a large leadership role in that with the campus, along with the administrators in all the buildings. But that ESL team has been a fantastic asset to our district in trying to work through this. And right before we were set to send out our letter from the district to all our families, informing them of what the schedule would look like for access testing for ESL students, our emerging bilingual students, Illinois changed and told us that that was being suspended. Access testing was not going to be conducted in January. It was moved back into March, pushed back at March as the earliest. So essentially aligning with the Illinois Assessment of Readiness, which I do want to talk briefly about Illinois Assessment of Readiness. So that's the yearly accountability assessment that we take in all Illinois public schools from grades 3 through 8 in reading and math, and then also the ISA Illinois Science Assessment, ISA, which is 5th grade and I believe 8th grade. So we are still scheduled to take those. Illinois has again told us that that would be a requirement to do in person. Again, the earliest that would begin is March. We have a full window from the earliest to the latest dates to be able to conduct that assessment. As of right now, it is still scheduled to be delivered. If you'll recall, last year, Illinois was granted a waiver to be excused from that assessment because of the nature of remote instruction. As of right now, Illinois has not been granted that waiver. So we are currently still planning for access testing to begin in March as they pushed it back. The Illinois Assessment of Readiness assessment that would happen in March, or the beginning window beginning in March. We wouldn't actually assess in March, but we would be within that window. The Illinois Science Assessment and also the DLM assessment, all required assessments by the state of Illinois, which would be in our earliest March dates. So I'll keep you updated as we learn more about what happens with those requirements as we see a new administration take office and a new Secretary of Education at the federal level and determine if those are going to still be required by Illinois as well. With that, we've also looked at our MAP assessment, which we have for this winter assessment. And again, I'll back up. Our MAP assessment from NWEA, typically we do that 3 times a year. We do it in the fall, the winter, and then in the spring. It is an assessment that we look for growth for students and also different data points that we use for comparison from year to year. With this winter, we made it an optional assessment. We did not, I should say optional. We've not made it a full mandatory assessment for all students to take the MAP assessment in the winter. We have done small or arranged for small piloting of MAP assessment during the winter to determine how well it can be given in a remote setting in the event that we need to give it in a remote setting. So we will not be doing full MAP testing this winter with all students. We'll be doing select classrooms, select students in a remote setting to determine the success of that, and ideally preparing us in the event that we will do some type of remote assessment later on for either IAR if they so allow it, or if we need to do our MAP testing in the end of the year, which would be that May, which we would like to conduct for all of our students. So we will be starting that in January as well. I'll keep you updated on not only the results of that, but also the success of administering it in a remote setting to determine how effective that can be done. So we didn't want to make any full decisions on that until we had some experience with some select classrooms being able to do that and determining what we'll end up doing in May if we haven't returned to full instruction or full students back. The other piece with the IAR that I just want to bring back, just because it is the difficulty of scheduling for these, is Illinois as of right now not only requires us to do that assessment in person, it also requires us to give the same assessment on the same day, which causes us some problems with our hybrid in which we have A students on one day, B students later in the week. Illinois, as of right now, is requiring us to give it to all students on the same day of that test or that test session. Again, we'll look for changes if there are so made by ISB with that as well. The professional development, I do want to remind those of you that were here about 4 years ago on the Board of Education, you'll remember that we came forward and presented with a new look to our professional development. We called it the Minooka Place, Professional Learning and Continuing Education. It was a brainchild of the Professional Development Committee. At the time, we started that with offering courses in connection with USF taught on our campus, taught with our instructors who are qualified to teach those courses and tailored to the needs of our district. The first couple of classes that we offered, we had a range from 5 to 8 teacher participants in those classes, which we thought was pretty successful starting off for the first time. I would like to, as Dr. Staub has mentioned, I would like to also give some credit to Dr. Staub because under her tutelage and her direction, the most recent courses offered through Minooka Place have been closer to the 30 participants, our teachers taking those courses, which I think is tremendous for our tremendous benefit to our staff to have that professional development tailored directly to what they need right now, which is what you heard Dr. Staub describe in those courses, And it is also, I believe, a good testament to how successful that program has been running. And I want to give credit for Dr. Staub, who has done a tremendous job taking ownership of that and helping that grow into a very successful PD model that we have, especially during this time, and the needs that we have with our staff at this time, been one of the many ways that we've been addressing those needs. And I think it's been very successful. So thank you, Dr. Staub, for that. In talking about going forward, we have started the conversations about what summer school will look like this year. We have been revisioning summer school in the very early stages of what that may look like, but I would give you some indication that we are going to broaden our summer school offerings. Traditionally, we have offered a few different programs during summer. The most attended summer school program is one that we offer to students. We start off with our high needs students, those who may need some additional support as far as academic support, some struggling student learning. And so we broaden that and offer a dive into summer program and a jumpstart program. Essentially 2 weeks at the end of school and 2 weeks in the beginning of the new school year for students. We start with those at the highest need, and then we broaden it out from there. I would say that this summer school is going to look very different from that. We will most likely broaden it into something that would be offered for all students in our district and tailoring it to the extension of learning. As we've talked about being in a remote setting and some of the difficulties we've had with instruction during that time and pacing, we'll be looking at offering summer school. I would ideally to address some more of that extension of those skills and preparation for moving into the next school year. I'll keep you updated as that starts to take shape, very early stages of that, but I would hope by next board meeting we'd have a better detail of what that could look like, because shortly after that we'll started advertising it to our parents and having signups for that. In addition to that, again, resources. While we're in this weird flux of COVID and remote learning and hybrid learning, we still are going to move forward in January, beginning to look at the resources needed for next year. And some of the ones that we'll be looking at for our teachers, social studies. We have a social studies text at the junior high level on the campus level that is no longer going to be supported in the online format. So we're going to be looking for a replacement for that for next year. Obviously, this has highlighted the need for online resources, that capability of those resources. Math is the other one that we've talked about from previous years. So we'll be looking at math resources. We have those lined up with those teachers that'll be coming in January to begin evaluating resources, ideally with a pilot with a math resource going into next year. And again, continuing resources for ELA across all grade levels, especially 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, who are up for that revision right now. And I'm sure this will parlay into what Dr. Mon would like to continue talking about is we've been very heavily involved in the return to school, increased time, as Dr. Mon mentioned early on in the board meeting, talking with our administrative team, our teacher teams about ways in which we can increase the instructional delivery time to our students, ideally in person. And we have been looking at a variety of ways in which we can do that. And of course, I believe, as Dr. Mon mentioned, I think we'll probably transition into more of that as we continue this conversation. So with that, I will either open it up for questions, or if Dr. Mon, if you want to start us off into the next discussion point, or if anybody has any questions about any of the other items I mentioned.
Dr. Mon, I have a question for you, and it has nothing to do with what Dr. Rulin had. I'm not sure if it's for you or Dr. Staub. Has there been any guidelines from the State Board of Education on COVID vaccines for our staff members? Because I think they were put into the group of first responders or priority groups.
From everything that we have read, is that K-12 school employees are in the second group of people that have been prioritized by the state. And I think that out of like 4 or 5 groups within that second group, we are still like 4 out of 5 in group 2. To where the conversations I've had with colleagues and both in the district and out of the district with local health officials, we wouldn't imagine that school employees would be able to get vaccines till late spring, something like that. And of course, it is a 2-dose vaccine from everything that we have been led to believe, to where it might be the end of May before that. So no, we don't have it's too far away right now for them to have given us any good guidelines on how it would be made available to school employees.
Okay, thank you.
So before we get rolling in other discussions, clearly, as Dr. Rulin said, we continue to have discussions every week with groups within our district, with groups outside of our district about how we can find ways to increase time. And each one comes with pros and cons. And as I alluded to in the beginning, the districts that have more time than us have their own unique set of facts that have enabled them to do that while still maintaining safety. At this time, our local health are still advising us that we should be maintaining that 6-foot distance, which is why the hybrid model is still what we have before us in January. But we're going to continue the conversations. We're going to continue to work with public health officials and our staff here to see if there are ways that we can slowly increase or make adjustments as we get into deeper into the third quarter and moving forward. But I say it publicly here, and I've said it before, we all have a shared commitment to get kids back in for a traditional school day and a traditional school year. I don't know that any educators want to see this long term. We as one of the pieces of the public comment, we thought that this was going to be short term back in the spring. And now pretty much 75% of 2020 has had some type of remote learning involved with this. And I think we're all ready for 2020 to get behind us here. One of the things that we are recommending that we do when we come back in January is, remember, we didn't pivot to remote learning because we felt that our schools were unsafe. This was a staffing issue, and we had up to 37, almost 40 staff members that were in quarantine at one time, as well as there were 470 students at one time that were in quarantine. So there was some little surge going on in our community. But we are recommending to increase the amount of staff in our buildings so that when we do come back, we have a better opportunity to not ever have to do this again. And so we are recommending increasing staff in 2 main areas when we return to in-person in January. And that the first is in our health services area, specifically in the area of nurses. The amount of work that the health staff had was quite a lot, and we saw them getting a little overwhelmed at times. So we will be recommending that the board hire in January an additional nurse at our campus, which would put 2 full-time nurses in each of those buildings. At our elementary schools, we are recommending the addition of a health aide, which would be a new position for us. But primarily, it would be taking on some of the paperwork, some of the calls that the nurses have been asked to do as we try to trace when we do get a case or a symptomatic child or staff member or something like that. So we believe that will greatly enhance our ability to respond there, as well as manage the isolation rooms that our schools have. So the addition of a nurse and then 4 health aides. We are also recommending the addition or increasing the number of permanent substitutes in each of our buildings. And as the board knows, that was new to us this year, where we were trying to get just people in our buildings that were going to be there every day, and that gives our staff, our principals, a different licensed substitute to deploy as needed. And as COVID went on, and with the number of quarantines that we saw, that flexibility became invaluable. So in working with our administrative teams, we are recommending that we increase the number of permanent substitutes at the junior high and intermediate school up to 5 each, as well as let the elementary schools go up to 4 each in each of those buildings. So it is likely you will see recommendations in January for those hires if we are able to find qualified candidates for those positions. But you could see those posted in the very near future. And with that, that kind of explains where we're at and where we see ourselves heading. I know we've already got some meetings scheduled early in January to continue the conversations of improving our model. Let's open it up for discussion and questions.
All right, I'll start. As you've talked about trying to get children back into the classroom for a longer period of time, even if we stick with the A/B model, is there not room, depending on how many children there are in the buildings, for them to have an area to do lunch and still be spread out? Or is that something that is still not possible?
Again, the 6 foot distance is a thing. The other is just the number of students taking off their masks within the, we do still have, we cannot have more than 50 students. So no, not each of our buildings have come up with the right way or think that they have a doable plan to implement lunch. I will say it's clearly different at elementary than it is up at our campus levels. Honestly, our junior high is just out of big spaces. Right now, the cafeteria is even used as a learning space. The band room is a learning space. The gymnasiums have, people in the gymnasiums, doing, physical education right now, even though it's, from a hybrid model. But there are kids in there. So we do not have any, there's not a good solution for lunch at our campus, especially with MIS having one single really large room and really not any other good places to spread the kids out. The elementaries have slightly different possibilities, but again, the cycle of moving kids throughout the building is something that we have so far avoided in our elementary schools. And so we've been trying to really limit the movement of children throughout those spaces.
If I may add, in addition to that, and Ms. Allen, I think you would understand this quite well as well, is the time in which students would be having lunch. Teachers would also be doing something during that time as well, whether it be plan or prep time or their own lunch, and trying to arrange that appropriately. Whereas if we have students having lunch in a teacher's classroom still being supervised by individual teachers, so trying to work out all those schedules with the restrictions on how many students we can have in a large gathering, that's been rather problematic as well with what that could look like. So some of the initial conversations about extending the school day and having to overcome the hurdle of lunch, that's really, I think, one of our largest hurdles is trying to figure out the lunch issue to get beyond that, to then increase the amount of time within that day and how we're able to monitor that and also provide for working conditions for our employees as well.
And there's, just continuing, and Dr. Rule, I don't know if you want to continue down this path, but currently in the afternoon session, so to get more in-person time, to get past lunch, you would probably extend the day by 1 or 2 hours. But that's also exactly when some of that small group time that includes the people that are at home are getting that daily attention, in that model. Can you expand, sir?
Yeah, so the way it currently works right now with our elementary is at the end of the 4-hour day, when the students begin their transportation home, our teachers are beginning their plan period and their lunch period as well, because they've worked with those students for the 4 hours straight, and they're getting their chance to have their lunch as well. And then after that time, those students have arrived home, they begin their small group sectioning. So they're actually working with the remote students, the A students, and the B students in those small group settings where they're giving them more one-to-one attention in that remote setting. To increase that, not saying that we shouldn't, I'm just saying in the event that we increase that to more in-person time, then the offset is then those students that are not there in the hybrid model, whether they be B students or whether they be the full-time remote students in addition, that time will have to be shifted or moved away because they'll be still students within the classroom. So that idea of that simultaneous synchronous would be occurring at that time, which would be increasing the instruction of in-person time, but you would be losing the small group setting that was previously there. So those are all the balancing pieces instructionally that we're trying to figure out within a moving model, what we're able to do and what's the most effective for not only the student's academic, but also the social emotional side of that as well.
So I actually have a question, and Dr. Mon, I know you and I have actually we're kind of discussing this or trying to figure out some things, but I would like to see, or I would like, just again, like, sorry, I don't see why we can't have or start IEP, the kids with the IEPs and the kindergartners and first graders, why we can't start them in school first. Those are the children that are, I mean, there's a lot of children that are struggling, and I know that. I understand that MIS and the junior high, they are at the capacity that getting some of those students in right now is just impossible because of the quantity of 50 even being in a lunchroom is, I mean, that's just going to be hard to do. So why can't we keep them at the hybrid level, or keep them at the hybrid because that was working? Okay, at least some of them are getting into the building. It was working. But the elementary students, why can't we work at getting those kindergartners and first graders and the ones that are just really struggling at the Zooming, and I mean the ones that aren't even allowed to, I mean, are having hard time. Sorry, I'm having a hard time talking tonight. Getting the boon cards, or just even are unable to take control of the computer to interact that way. Getting them in the schools on a full day, because we can spread them out to eat, you know, I mean, and the parents that don't want to send their children then to school because of having to take the masks off to eat, then, I mean, they have their choice to keep their students home then. I mean, because we can space them out 6 feet apart, right? Because it's
not in the classrooms, we couldn't. Right. That's the key thing, is that we still have, but probably when I looked at the numbers today that Mr. Souza sent me, while we still have, 33 to 35% of our campus students so far have selected remote for third quarter. Again, we still have 25% of the overall population that haven't responded yet. So those aren't final numbers, but the elementary numbers have actually dropped down to the low 20s, which means more people want to come back in session. So we could see, 18 to 20 kids in those primary grade levels that are choosing to come back in person. And we cannot keep those kids 6 feet apart in the classrooms. Our classrooms are not big enough to do that.
And what if we, I'm sorry.
The other thing just to consider with that is because it's not always an even spread of those who are returning and those who want to remain remote. So you might have a class that may, with all the students that are wanting to attend in person, might be able to get the 6 foot because there's that many more that have chosen to do remote, whereas a class right next door has fewer that have chosen to do remote and they wouldn't be able to. So even the 20% is not like an even distribution among each of the classrooms either. So those are, again, another variable just to consider.
And Mr. Fisher, I want to make sure that I'm clear. It's not that you can't do that. The guidance says socially distance where possible. It's just so far we have said we are doing everything we can to maintain the 6 foot distance, which is why the hybrid model, especially even for the primaries, has been the recommendation that we've brought forward. So any of these are possibilities if the board wants to say that the 6 foot distance is not, we don't want to see that in our primary classrooms anymore. But that is why the administration has brought this plan, back as the recommended solution at this time.
So let me just ask this: if we stick with a hybrid, and so half the kids of a class are coming, and we'll say the elementary level because obviously the junior high and intermediate are different. There's still going to be too many children in the classroom of half the classroom that you can't keep them 6 feet apart.
So it'd actually be 2/3 of the class that would be, if we were to Maybe I didn't understand quite, Ms. Allen, but if we were to bring all the students that chose to be in person, some of those classrooms would be 2/3 of those students in person at one time, while 1/3 or 20% remain remote. And that's where we do have an issue with the 6 feet separation within a classroom. And maybe I didn't understand the question correctly.
Well, okay, I guess what I'm looking at is if you have, okay, let's say classroom 3A has, 20 of their children that want to come to school. That means you have 10 on one set of days and 10 on another set of days. Those children can't be 6 feet apart?
They are 6 feet apart now. That's what we're doing,
Okay.
which is maintaining 6 feet distance.
I guess so then, I mean, I don't know. Are there other places in the bill, and I'm talking elementary because I don't know how the gyms are being used, and like if we could extend the day a little bit longer and have them have lunch, can they not be spread out? And obviously you're going to stagger your lunch periods like you do anyway, that they could be far enough apart in like a gymnasium setting to eat lunch.
That is one of the scenarios that we're starting to look at that we are looking at in the building and measuring out. That is the avenue that we need to look at, and that's what we're trying to figure out right now with the spacing out. So the spacing with the 50 number max, trying to find out if the like, let's say the current lunchroom, if we'd be able to spread those students out during that 50 max and still have supervision and be able to rotate throughout the day to be able to do that. Well, it only maintains 50 at a time. So measuring that out as of right now within the elementaries is an area that we're examining. Campus, as you mentioned, that's not possible right now. So in order for that to work, we would have to find a large space in which that 50 would work without doing it just in the classroom, because then we're running into the supervision issue in the classroom. So absolutely, that is one of the areas that we are examining to determine if that is really a feasibility within our elementary, and whether or not we would be able to expound that K4, or again, are we starting with the K2, as we all, I think, have agreed that those are the students that are struggling the most with remote learning based on the technologies and simply because of the foundational skills that where they are in their development. And just to remember, we also have the unintended consequence of taking away small group time. The more time we increase what's happening in the afternoon. So
yeah, but I guess my question to that was, you're increasing the amount of time that they're in person, even though it's only every other day. You're still, so is that more advantageous for a child over a period of time than the other way? And I guess my other question is, has there been any discussion, and I know this means possibly switching teachers, of going back to what we originally had, which was some of our, depending on how many students in a particular grade level at any particular building, are going to do in school learning versus remote, and having just in school learning teachers and remote teachers.
So what ends up happening with that is it increases the classroom size, because then that teacher becomes only the remote student teacher. So then we have a bump up within the classroom size in addition to that. The other piece that we've been trying to be very careful with is maintaining the consistency of their educational experience, knowing that while we're doing an adaptive pause right now, that these students throughout are going to have to go, just because of the experience that we've had for this first half of the school year, these students have had to go into quarantine because of contact. And so if they go into quarantine, does that student then transfer to the remote teacher, or do they remain with their current teacher and continue on with the education because they're able to do that with the remote synchronous? And we found that in our conversations, that's been the most advantageous for our students, is to maintain that consistency of what the instruction looks like at this time, to be able to be adaptive to those, not only the students that have to go into quarantine and go into remote for what was the 14 days or possibly 10 days, but then also when teachers have to do the same, trying to maintain that consistency has been a priority of ours. And that was pretty loud from our parents as well when we started talking about going into this adaptive pause, is they wanted to make sure that they were sticking with their same teacher because of not only the, in my view, it's the instructional curriculum side, but also parents were very concerned about with our young students, that emotional side of connecting with their teacher and having to try to start back with a new relationship with a teacher by switching, a quarter into it or 16 weeks into it. So we're definitely trying to maintain consistency in doing that. And Ms. Allen, your point with increasing the amount of instructional time for those that are on the hybrid, the AB, I agree with you. I think getting more time beyond lunch, because when we talk about increasing just an hour, like going from 4 hours to 5 hours in person, what we're really saying is we're doing 4 hours of instruction and then the fifth hour is really lunch. So to get more instructional time, we have to go beyond, essentially, I know I'm just using general numbers here, but essentially going beyond the fifth hour to try to get more instructional time. But then the 20 to 30% of students that are fully remote, that actually decreases the amount of time that they have for the instructional with the one-on-one teacher with that small group setting. So it does increase that instruction for those in person, whether it be every other day, but then there also is a slight decrease in those who are fully remote during that time as well. It's almost like it has to be, and I apologize, this is just a off the cuff remark, but it seems like in our conversations, the incremental step up, it has to be more substantial to be a benefit versus the risk of lunch and those type of hurdles that we have to get. The bang has to be large enough to offset the changes that we're making. And so that's really where we're at, is just adding 1 hour provides a logistical change where we have students in the building for 5 hours, but the instruction doesn't change. And it takes away some of the small group instruction from those who are not in the building. So then we have to go to more than the 5 hours to get more instructional time, right? Which increases the risk with the lunch, and then the students remaining within the building with lunch. And then those students who are not in the building missing out on the small group time that was happening at that point. And then even with lunch, trying to figure out the logistics of where are they having lunch so that we are in compliance with not only our workforce, right, but also that our students are safe so that they're in a safe environment to eat, and our staff are in a safe environment to also have their lunch prep and monitor students as well.
Well, I guess I have a question then. It's like, what then are the TAs doing? Because it seems like everything's on our teachers. You know what I mean? Like, so if small group time would be, I mean, if we have our TAs would be in school then as well. So that's a perfect opportunity for the TAs to be part of that small group time, to help the students.
Also, I mean, if we were increasing the amount of in-person time, the TAs would still be involved in the classroom as well.
Right, exactly. So, I mean, that right there would be your offset.
Well, I'm just saying they wouldn't be available to manage the small group settings if they were still assisting with the in-person that was going on.
Okay, I mean, I guess this is obviously going to be more of a, I don't want to take up the whole board meeting with it now that it's going to be.
It's going to be a conversation as we continue into third quarter. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
Has there been any discussion into utilizing any of the Wednesdays that are right now completely remote as a way to increase instructional time in person? Because I do understand, that there's an offset to every decision that's made, that nothing is ideal. And I think, weighing what is best for our students and getting them more instructional time there's going to be downsides to any scenario we choose. So I'm just curious if that one has been looked at all. I do understand with childcare, we had some feedback from families that, alternating, having weeks have different schedules is very difficult to maintain, but there's not a scenario that's going to be perfect for everyone. So I'm just curious if you've looked at it at all.
Yes, and in fact, I think that's probably one of the areas that seems more feasible at this time. Again, there's always hurdles with everything, as you've mentioned, but yes, that within our structure right now, that seems to be a little bit easier to manage without just huge disruption. So that absolutely is one of the ideas that is on the table for considering.
And another aspect of this is that actually gets a little bit into the facility side. So Mr. Searle, I know you and I even had a conversation today about Wednesdays. So if you could briefly, add your opinion there.
Sure, sure. Just one thing I'd like to throw out there, it's again, opinion. Our equipment is kind of limits us in a lot of capacities. Other districts have equipment that allows the turns to
and can I clarify real quick? By equipment, we're talking about the unit vents in our classroom.
That
so
is
we're
correct.
not talking about handheld stuff from custodians. Or
No, that's correct. This is stationary equipment that is basically the mainstay of all of our buildings. Probably 70–80% of our equipment is univents, and it only allows us to turn air so many times. It's a limitation. And I don't know a way around that limitation. And my gut feeling is that if we try to ignore that limitation, it's going to quickly create issues. And that Wednesday allows us to clean that air in a way that we can't do any other way. We're running 24/7 right now. We've taken off all the schedules. Everything to slow our HVAC down has been removed. We're running it at max. We're obviously encountering lots of problems doing that, but we are. And it really is the mainstay of how we're staying in right now, in my opinion. And, we could pull that out, but I don't think it would be long before we'd encounter problems. So I just, I'd like everyone to just realize that there's certain physical limitations we have in our buildings. Doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that that's what we have.
To paraphrase what Mr. Searle is trying to say is, like, one of the advantages that the Wednesday gives us is it gives our HVAC systems an entire more than 24-hour period to cycle the air completely out of the building and bring in new, completely fresh air for a different group of people. And one of the reasons that we believe that our mitigations and safety protocols has worked is we've maintained the distancing, and we are able to cycle that air through. So it's a different aspect. We focus so much on the 6 feet and when we can get more learning time. Mr. Searle is dealing with a completely different set of factors in leading him to make his recommendations.
And I certainly understand that, and I appreciate that feedback. That's something I would have not thought of on Wednesdays. I just know, as year goes on, I'm hearing loud and clear from our community that especially the social emotional needs of our students and our families is just compounding. So I think there's never going to be an ideal scenario, but I certainly think that there is a scenario. So I don't know what it is. I can't pretend to know what it is. I don't work in the buildings. I'm not there every day. But I would just, be curious to know as things move forward, any way that we can get an additional time for our students in the buildings, I think is great. I think we're, I saw the CDC put another update out about timeline for teachers to get vaccinated, which I think is going to provide those that choose to do that and, an option to protect themselves. Our students will not be included in that. So with the low risk of transmission to students and how well they're doing health-wise, I just really encourage us to stay, as strongly as we can to try to get these students back in the buildings for more time. I know it's harder at the campus, but we can't discredit the social emotional effects that they're encountering as well.
Absolutely. Other questions for this evening? Well, to conclude, I guess I'll, Mr. President, if I can move into the administrative reports. And a lot of this has been, our cabinet has kind of gone into their reports at the same time. Really, just want to wish our entire community a wonderful holiday season. I know that, that our hybrid learning plan is not the perfect model for anybody. There are people that want more time. There are people out there that think we should be fully remote for the whole year. There are people that think we should be back in session. And please know that the people here in District 201 are doing our best to try to bring forth the right recommendation that we think keeps our students and staff safe within our buildings while still trying to get them back in school. We also are worried about the effect on the primary kids. We work every day and we consider every day the social emotional impact this is having on students. And there, as some of you have said, there are no right answers in this. It's just balancing the cons versus the pros of everything that we're presented with. And I think I can speak for everyone on this call that we are all ready for 2020 and COVID to get behind us so that we can get our schools back to school. We wish everyone just an incredible holiday. Songs like Home for the Holidays and I'll Be Home for Christmas take on an entirely new meaning in 2020. We encourage everyone out there to, celebrate with family and friends, but do it safely so that we can stay on our trajectory of getting back in school on January 19th the way we plan. We will keep working to get our kids in more. We will never stop until kids are back full time, but we are going to do so in a safe and ethical manner. So again, we wish everyone out there the best holiday season that 2020 will allow you to have. And with that, Mr. President, Dr. Rulin, unless anybody else has anything else for your administrative report, we do have executive session on our agenda to discuss bargaining and the employment compensation and or discipline of specific employees.
Else? And I'll move for to go in executive, looking for a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session.
Please. Second?
Second.
Second. Oops.
And roll call.
Vicki was fast.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I couldn't, my mouse fell asleep. I couldn't I had to wake it up.
Mrs. Conquest.
Aye.
Mrs. Allen.
Aye.
Mrs. Fisher.
Aye.
Mr. Karczewski.
Aye.
Mr. Skorzynski.
Aye.
Mr. Sartorius.
Aye. So we need to go into the other.
Members of the community that may be watching, there is no action after executive session. So we plan to adjourn from executive session without returning over to this call in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. These are recorded. The final vote to adjourn the public meeting will be recorded appropriately. But we will be ending this meeting and moving to a different session that is closed. So thank you for anyone that's watching and good night, everyone. And for the board members, you have a separate link to join an executive session meeting. We will see you over there.